They say love can survive anything, but they never tell you what happens when love meets ambition. That's how my story begins. My name's Ethan, and a few years ago, I thought I had everything I needed. A small apartment in Seattle, a stable job at a software company, and the woman I believed was my forever, Olivia. She wasn't just my girlfriend. She was my world. We didn't have much, but we had each other. I still remember those late nights when we'd order cheap takeout, sit by the window, and dream about the future. She'd talk about wanting to travel, to see the world, to live in houses that touch the sky. And I'd smile, telling her, "One day, Liv, one day, we'll get there. Together." For a while she believed it. For a while I did too. But then, something changed. It started small, missed calls, shorter texts, quiet dinners. I'd ask if something was wrong, and she'd smile. But the smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. She started dressing differently, sharper, more expensive. She started wearing perfume that wasn't hers. At first, I thought it was just stress from work. She had just landed a job at a big marketing firm downtown. It was a step up. I was proud of her. Until she started mentioning I'd never heard before, Preston Hall. He was her firm's biggest client, a young, flashy tech millionaire. The kind of man who wore confidence like a custom suit. The kind of man who had everything I didn't. She'd talk about him casually, almost like she didn't realize how much it hurt me to hear his name. "Preston's brilliant," she'd say. "You should see the house he just bought." Every time she said his name, I felt something twist inside me. Then came the night everything changed. It was raining. The kind of rain that makes the city glow, but your heart feel heavy. I walked into our apartment after a long day at work, and there she was, sitting on the couch, suitcase beside her. She didn't look angry. She looked tired. And that was somehow worse. "Ethan," she said softly, "you're a good man. You really are. But I can't do this anymore." My chest tightened. "Do what?" "This life," she whispered. "I want more. I need more." "Preston." She stopped herself mid-sentence, but she didn't have to finish. I already knew. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I wanted to shout, to ask why him, to tell her that love was enough. But the words never came out. Instead, I just nodded. "If that's what you want," I said quietly, "then go." She hesitated, maybe waiting for me to stop her. But I didn't, because deep down, I knew, once someone starts dreaming of another life, you can't hold them in yours anymore. She picked up her suitcase, walked to the door, and said, "I'm sorry." And just like that, she was gone. The next few weeks were a blur. I'd go to work, come home, and pretend I was fine. But inside, I was unraveling. Then one night, while scrolling through social media, I saw a photo of her on a yacht, champagne in hand, standing next to Preston Hall. The caption read, "A power couple in the making." That's when something inside me shifted. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was awake. She left me for a millionaire, I whispered to myself. But one day, she realized, the man she left behind was never small. He was just unfinished. That night I didn't cry. I didn't drink. I just sat in silence and made a promise, not to win her back, but to become someone she'd never see coming. That night something in me broke, but it wasn't my heart. It was my limits. When your heart breaks, the world doesn't stop for you. It just gets quieter. After Olivia left, the days blurred together. The coffee tasted the same, the city lights still glowed. But everything felt empty. I'd come home from work and stare at the spot where she used to sit, that old corner by the window, where she'd dream out loud. Now it was just silence. No laughter. No plans, just me. And my thoughts. At first, I tried to move on. I told myself time would heal everything. But time doesn't heal. It only hides the scars until you decide to do something about them. So, I did. I stopped going out, stopped meeting friends. Every night after work, I opened my laptop and studied. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew I had to become someone new. Someone who would never be looked down on again. I started with the basics: business strategy, finance, coding, anything that could make me stronger, smarter, sharper. My apartment became my war room. Stacks of books, scribbled notes, online lectures playing while I ate dinner. While they were out drinking champagne, I was studying balance sheets. While they were clinking glasses on yachts, I was learning how to read company valuations. While she was sleeping in silk sheets, I was surviving on black coffee and quiet determination. The pain didn't disappear, it transformed. It became energy. Every sleepless night was another step forward. A year passed, then another. People at work started noticing a change in me. I wasn't just a developer anymore. I was seeing the bigger picture. I learned how businesses grew, how investors thought, how people like Preston Hawley moved money around to build power. It fascinated me and frustrated me. He wasn't smarter than me. He just played a different game. So I decided to learn his game and then rewrite the rules. That's when I launched my first small startup, an AI analytics tool. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't flashy. But it worked. And for the first time in years, I felt something close to pride again. Success didn't come overnight. There were rejections, failures, and nights when I questioned everything. But every setback reminded me why I started, because she didn't believe in me. And I refused to let her be right. As my company grew, so did my network. I started meeting investors, entrepreneurs, mentors, people who saw potential where I only saw revenge. But I kept my emotions hidden behind a calm smile. No one knew my story. No one needed to. Then one day, during a routine funding discussion, I overheard a familiar name: Hawley Innovations, Preston Hale's company. The same man Olivia left me for. They were expanding, looking for new partners, desperate for silent investors after a failed product launch, and that's when it hit me. I didn't just want success. I wanted precision. That night, I created a new identity, E. Lawson, a quiet, untraceable investor persona. I used it to move in the shadows, investing in tech firms, gathering influence quietly. Every deal, every signature, built a bridge towards something bigger. No one questioned who E. Lawson was. They only cared that the money was clean and the results were good. I was no longer the man left behind. I was the man behind the curtain. From that moment on, my life stopped being about heartbreak and started being about power. I remember looking out my apartment window one night. Same view, same rain, but everything felt different. I whispered to myself, almost smiling, if love made me blind, betrayal taught me how to see. Because sometimes losing someone isn't the end. It's the beginning of everything they never believed you could be. Revenge doesn't start with anger. It starts with silence and a plan. 2 years had passed since Olivia walked out of my life. In that time, I built something real. A small tech company that began as a late-night idea in my apartment. What started with one laptop and too much heartbreak had turned into something investors were finally noticing. Emails came in from venture firms. Meetings were booked. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving, I was winning. But victory has a strange taste when you've waited for it too long. It's not sweet. It's sharp. It cuts deeper, because you remember every moment that made you want it. At the same time, the world around me shifted. News broke that Hawley Innovations, Preston Hale's company, the same man Olivia left me for, was facing trouble. Their big product launch had failed. Delays, bad reviews. Investors losing faith. I couldn't help but smile when I read the headline. The empire she traded love for was starting to crumble, quietly, just like I wanted it to. But I didn't celebrate. Not yet, because this wasn't the time to gloat. It was the time to move. That week, I met with my legal advisor under my alias, E. Lawson. He didn't know my real name. And that's exactly how I wanted it. That we discussed an investment proposal, subtle, indirect, but powerful. Through a proxy firm, I could buy a small stake in Holly Innovations without revealing my identity. That it wasn't about money. It was about position. When I signed the papers, something inside me shifted again. I stared at Preston's name printed on the documents. And right beneath it, my hidden signature, unseen but powerful. He saw the money. He never saw me. That line stayed in my head like a whisper I couldn't shake. I wasn't in his spotlight, but I was standing behind it, controlling the switch. A few months later, the deal closed. I officially became a silent investor in Holly Innovations. Only a small percentage, not enough to make noise, but enough to influence. And influence, I learned, is more dangerous than power. Through advisors and board members, I started making quiet suggestions. Nothing obvious, just gentle nudges. A recommendation here, a question there. It's amazing how much chaos you can create by sounding helpful. Soon, small cracks began to appear in Preston's leadership. Executives started doubting his decisions. Departments turned against each other. All I did was watch. And smile. He didn't know it yet, but every move he made was being shaped by the man he thought he'd defeated years ago. Meanwhile, I stayed invisible. E. Lawson became somewhat of a mystery in business circles, the quiet backer who never showed his face. Never gave interviews but always made the right moves. I liked that. It kept me free. It kept me dangerous. Sometimes late at night, I'd think of Olivia. I'd wonder if she ever questioned her choice. If she ever realized that the life she left me for was now being funded by the man she abandoned. But I didn't reach out. Not yet. The best kind of revenge isn't loud, it's patient. Weeks later, I got a call from one of Hale's senior partners. He said, "Mr. Lawson, Preston would like to meet you in person. He's curious about his newest investor." I paused, then smiled. The moment I'd been building toward was finally here. The man she left me for was about to shake my hand. "He doesn't know it yet," I whispered, "but he just made me his partner." Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't about destruction. It's about walking into a room where the people who doubted you can no longer look away. The invitation arrived in a thick, gold-edged envelope. A charity gala in Los Angeles, hosted by Preston Holly and his wife, Olivia Holly. I stared at the names for a long moment. The letters sharp against the page. 2 years ago, I wouldn't have been on that guest list. But now, I was attending as E. Lawson, one of their most promising investors. Funny how the world works. The night of the gala, the city shimmered. The venue, a glass ballroom overlooking the skyline, sparkled with chandeliers, cameras, and people who lived their lives chasing headlines. Limousines lined the entrance. Laughter echoed in polished marble halls. I arrived alone, wearing a black suit tailored to quiet perfection. As I stepped out, flashes went off. Not for me, of course, but I didn't mind. I wasn't there to be seen. I was there to be remembered. Inside, waiters carried trays of champagne. A string quartet played softly near a fountain. Every corner smelled of money, power, and pretense. "Good evening, Mr. Lawson," a hostess said with a perfect smile. "Welcome to the Holly Foundation Gala." I nodded, scanning the crowd. And there she was. Olivia. She looked radiant, wearing the kind of confidence that money buys, but love can't replace. Her laugh sounded lighter, but not happier. Preston stood beside her, charming as ever, shaking hands, posing for cameras, pretending the world was his stage. For a moment, I just watched. Not with bitterness. Not anymore. Just quiet understanding. Then she turned. Our eyes met. Time didn't stop, but it slowed. Her smile faltered. Confusion. Recognition. Then disbelief. "Ethan?" Her lips barely moved, though she didn't say it aloud. I smiled politely, giving nothing away. To her, I was E. Lawson, an investor, a stranger, a ghost from a past she tried to forget. Moments later, Preston approached, confident, loud, and blissfully unaware. "Mr. Lawson." "Finally we meet in person," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "I've heard great things about your investments." His tone carried that practiced charm, the kind that sells dreams but hides desperation. Returned his handshake calmly. "I'm pleased to finally meet you. Mr. Hawley, you've built quite an empire." He laughed. "Oh, this?" He gestured around the room. "Just a little show for the press. But I suppose you know what it's like. Success attracts attention." I nodded, glancing briefly at Olivia. She looked away quickly, pretending to laugh at something a guest said. Her hands, though, were trembling, I noticed. Preston kept talking. Unaware of the storm brewing in his own house, he bragged about upcoming projects, about his expansion plans, about how investors like me were lucky to be part of the next big wave. But behind his words, I saw it, the cracks. Forced laughter. Nervous glances from his team. The subtle tension that clings to a man whose empire is slipping. "I've read your recent reports," I said calmly. "Delays, supplier issues. Tough times for innovation." He chuckled stiffly. "Temporary setbacks. You know how the market is." "Of course," I replied. "The market always tells the truth, eventually." For the first time, he looked unsure. Later, during dinner, Olivia approached me. Her voice was quiet. "I didn't know you'd be here." I smiled faintly. Neither did I. Life has a strange sense of timing. She hesitated. "You've changed." I looked her in the eye. "No, I just became the man you thought I'd never be." Before she could respond, Preston called her from across the room. She turned away, but not before I saw it, the guilt behind her perfect smile. As the night went on, I watched them dance beneath crystal lights. The crowd cheered, cameras flashed, but I knew the truth. Their empire was trembling, and they didn't even feel the cracks under their feet. That night wasn't about charity. It was about exposure. And soon, the world would see what I already knew. The king's crown was slipping. They thought the night was about charity, I whispered, watching them from the shadows. They had no idea it was about justice. Sometimes revenge doesn't come from striking back. It comes from letting the truth do all the work. After the gala, things began to move quickly. My role as E. Lawson, the silent investor, gave me access to meetings, reports, and board discussions most people would never see. And the deeper I looked into Preston's empire, the more I realized something. It wasn't an empire at all. It was a house of cards, held together by charm, ego, and borrowed money. Preston Hawley wasn't a genius. He was a showman. And I was about to turn his spotlight into a mirror. At first, I didn't do anything drastic. All I did was ask questions, the kind that make people nervous. I'd send small notes to the board, subtle things like, "Why is the revenue from last quarter still pending? Who approved the new supplier without proper audits?" Little ripples. But ripples become waves when people are already standing on unstable ground. Soon, whispers started spreading through the office halls. Investors grew cautious. The confidence that once surrounded Preston began to fade. He didn't know it yet, but every deal that fell through, every partner that hesitated, it all traced back to me. I didn't destroy him, I whispered one night, watching his latest TV interview. I just showed the world who he really was. Then came the first major blow. A key investor withdrew from a joint project, citing concerns over transparency. The news hit the business press within hours. Hawley Innovations stock dipped. Preston blamed the economy, but the board wasn't convinced. Behind the scenes, I had shared documents with one of the directors, proof of Preston's inflated numbers and hidden debts. Nothing illegal, just dishonest. Enough to raise eyebrows. Enough to make people question the golden boy they once worshipped. Soon, internal audits were launched. Meetings turned tense, and Olivia, standing beside him through every event, began to notice the cracks. One evening, she was caught on camera at a charity dinner, forcing a smile as Preston argued with reporters. The once perfect couple no longer looked untouchable. I saw the footage online. Her eyes filled with something I recognized: regret. She wanted the life he promised, I murmured. Now she's trapped inside his lie. Preston, on the other hand, doubled down. His pride wouldn't let him see what was happening. He took bigger risks, borrowed more, tried to launch a new product line without proper testing. Desperate to prove his empire was still strong, but the investors weren't buying it anymore. They started pulling out, one by one, like dominoes falling in slow motion, and through it all, I stayed quiet, calm, invisible. E. Lawson was just another investor, patient, professional, always smiling. But every time I spoke in those meetings, Preston flinched. He didn't know why. Maybe he felt something familiar in my voice. Or maybe, deep down, he sensed that the ghost of his past was standing right beside him. The collapse wasn't loud. It was silent, almost poetic. Contracts were canceled. Partnerships dissolved. The media began to circle, hungry for answers. And then, one morning, the headline hit: Holly Innovations under investigation for financial misconduct. The same reporters who once praised him now tore him apart. Preston tried to defend himself, holding a press conference, but the truth had already taken over. He stammered, sweating under the camera lights. The confidence was gone. The charm had cracked. Olivia stood behind him, frozen, watching the empire she once admired fall apart, just like the love she traded everything for. That night, I sat in my office, watching it all unfold on the news. The company was finished. Preston Holly, the man she left me for, was being publicly humiliated on live television, and I didn't lift a finger. I never wanted to destroy him, I said softly. All I did was hold up a mirror and let the world see the truth. As the broadcast ended, I turned off the screen. No smile, no victory dance. Just silence, the same silence that started it all. In the end, I whispered, his empire didn't collapse because of me. It collapsed because it was never real. Some truths don't need to be shouted. When the time is right, they reveal themselves. It was 3 days after Preston's downfall hit the news. Every channel, every headline carried his name: Holly Innovations collapses amid scandal. He had disappeared from the spotlight, and with him, so had Olivia. I thought I'd seen the last of them. But one evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, I heard a knock on my office door. I didn't need to guess who it was. When I opened it, there she stood. Olivia. She looked different. Not the confident woman from the gala. Not the girl who once dreamed by my side. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes tired. The diamond ring she used to flaunt was gone. All that remained was silence and the weight of regret. Ethan, she whispered. Not Mr. Lawson, not the investor. Just Ethan. It was the first time she'd said my name in years. I know, she continued softly. I know it was you. You were the silent investor. The one behind everything. I said nothing. I just gestured for her to come in. She hesitated before stepping inside, her heels clicking softly against the floor. She looked around my office, the awards, the photos, the quiet success I'd built. Her voice trembled. You did it. You became everything you said you would. I looked at her calmly. I became what I had to. There was a pause, long enough for the past to catch up. She took a deep breath. Preston used me, Ethan. He didn't love me. He loved how I looked standing next to him. The wife that made him look successful. Her voice cracked. I thought I was chasing happiness. But all I did was chain myself to someone else's dream. I wanted to feel pity. maybe even anger. But all I felt was distance, like watching a storm from the safety of a window. I finally said, "You left me to chase gold." I became the one who mined it. She flinched, not because the words were cruel, but because they were true. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I was wrong, Ethan, about everything. You loved me for who I was, not for what I could give you." She took a shaky breath. "Do you ever think of us?" I smiled faintly. "Every now and then, but not the way you think." She looked up, confused. "I don't think about what we had," I said. "I think about what it taught me." She nodded slowly, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I wish I could take it back." I shook my head. "Don't. If you hadn't left, I might never have found who I was meant to be." She looked at me then, really looked. Not at the man she left, but at the man she helped create. Outside, the city lights began to flicker on. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It was the same kind of silence we once shared, only now it wasn't comfort. It was closure. She finally whispered, "So this is it?" I nodded. "This is peace." She tried to smile, but her lips trembled. As I walked toward the door, she called after me softly, "Ethan, I hope you find happiness." I paused, turning slightly. "I already have," I said. "It's called freedom." And with that, I walked away, through the glass wall of my office. I could see her standing there, still silent, eyes filled with tears. Maybe she realized it then, that the cost of her choices wasn't just losing me. It was losing herself along the way. I didn't need to see her again. The past had finally let go. The greatest revenge, I whispered to myself, is not proving someone wrong. It's showing them you moved on without hate. Some endings don't come with fireworks, just quiet understanding. It had been months since that final conversation with Olivia. The noise around Preston Hale's downfall had faded. The world had moved on, as it always does, but I hadn't gone back to the past. I didn't need to, because I was finally standing in the future I built with my own two hands. Every morning now, I walk into my office, the one with the glass walls and the skyline view. From up here, the city looks different. The same lights that once reminded me of loneliness now look like a map of choices, each one leading me here. I still remember the man I used to be, working late nights, dreaming small dreams, believing love was enough. And I remember the day she walked away. That moment didn't break me. It revealed me. It showed me what I was capable of when pain became purpose. People ask me sometimes, was it worth it? All of it. The long nights, the silence, the revenge. And I never know how to answer right away, because revenge didn't make me happy. But it made me whole. It gave me closure that time never could. It forced me to rebuild myself from the ground up, not to prove her wrong, but to prove to myself that I was always enough. I used to think revenge was about winning. Now I know. It's about letting go. Sometimes, when the city quiets down, I still think about Olivia. Not with anger. Not even with longing. Just with acceptance. She was a chapter. One that ended the day she chose someone else's world over ours. And maybe she thought she was trading up. But in chasing perfection, she forgot something simple. Perfection isn't real. It's built on illusion. Just like the empire Preston built and lost. I heard she moved away after everything fell apart. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere no one knows her name. I wish her peace. Not because she deserves it, but because I deserve to stop carrying her story in mind. We all make choices. Hers was wealth. Mine was worth. And that made all the difference. Standing by the window, I think about the irony of it all. She left me for a millionaire. But in the end, I became something she never saw coming. Not richer, not flashier, but freer. When people choose wealth over love, they often forget. Wealth fades, but character compounds. It grows, it multiplies. It lasts. Money can buy comfort, but it can't buy peace. And peace, that's what I fought for. If you asked me now what, I'd say to the man I was back then, the one standing in the rain as she packed her bags, I'd tell him this: don't chase her. Don't beg her to stay. Let her go. And let the pain teach you who you are. Because heartbreak doesn't end you. It begins you. The world outside my window sparkles with life, cars, lights, dreams in motion. And as I stand there, watching it all, I feel something I haven't felt in years: peace. No anger, no need for revenge. Just gratitude. For every storm that brought me here, I turn off the lights, take one last look at the city, and smile. She left me for a millionaire. But in the end, I became something money could never buy: untouchable. Every story leaves a mark. Some teach us pain, others teach us power. If this story moved you, remind me by hitting that like button. It tells me these stories still matter. Subscribe for more tales of love, betrayal, and justice. Because sometimes, the quietest revenge speaks the loudest. Until next time. Remember, strength isn't found in getting even, it's found in moving on.